success. Okay, I love it when a plan comes together. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm so happy to see so many people. We have a lot of really good information to share, so we'll get started here in 1 second. Still got some folks coming in in the waiting room. Okay, while they're joining, we'll go ahead and get going. So, thank you so much for joining us this evening for the next in our series of virtual events, the Green Book and HBCUs in Texas. As always, our hope is that through these events, you will continue to get to know us, the Friends of the Texas Historical Commission, and learn about our mission to support the Texas Historical Commission in its preservation efforts across the state. Many of you have chosen to support us with donations through these events. We are so grateful for that. Thank you. I want to welcome our THC commissioners, our Friends board members. I see a few Friends of THC board members in their audience, so welcome tonight. And also our colleagues at the Texas Historical Commission. Thank you guys for being with us. We appreciate that you took the time to join us for this event. I'm Christy Peliquin, the development manager for the Friends of the Texas Historical Commission. And also in our audience is Anjali Zucci. She's the executive director for the Friends. If you haven't already followed us on social media, please do so. We would love to stay in touch with you. This is also how you can find out about future events. One, sort of FYI is that for January, we'll be taking our annual break from virtual events, but we will be back in February with more interesting Texas topics. So please stay tuned. A few housekeeping items before I introduce today's event and our presenters. We would appreciate it if you could keep your microphones on mute. Also, we're broadcasting this event through Facebook Live. After the event, it'll probably be tomorrow, we'll send you an email with a link to the recording as well as some additional resources that our presenters are going to mention tonight. And then you'll be able to have that to share with friends and family if you so desire. Let's see. The structure of our presentation is that we will let our presenters complete their whole presentation, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end of the session. And during the presentation, you can put your questions into the chat box. That way, we'll be able to kind of do them first come, first serve when we get to the end. Okay, done with the housekeeping. Moving on to the good stuff. It is now my privilege to introduce our presenters. As you may know, the Friends of the THC's motto is preserving the real places and real stories of Texas. Tonight's event helps illuminate a part of our history that many people don't know much about. To help us learn, we're joined by two experts on the topic. Danielle Rose Dixon is the 2022 Larry Oaks Preservation Scholar with the Friends of the Texas Historical Commission. She's also a recent college graduate, earning her Master's of Arts degree in History from the University of Texas at San Antonio. Born and raised in the Bay Area, home to some of the most renowned instances of art activism and social justice organizing, Danielle has always had a passion for truth-seeking from a young age. Today, she uses her career as a historian to become a voice for the voiceless, uncovering the life stories of silenced and marginalized people. We are also joined by Leslie Wolfenden. Leslie Wolfenden is the Historic Resources Survey Coordinator for the Texas Historical Commission, where she has managed the Historic Texas Highways and Historic Resources Survey Program since 2013. Prior to that, she worked in the Texas Main Street Program as a project designer. She has also worked in the private sector in environmental consulting and had an 18-year career in interior design. She also served on the Austin Historic Landmark Commission and has volunteered for San Austin Cemeteries, a local nonprofit group leading grassroots efforts to restore the 1914 Gothic Revival Chapel at the historic Oakwood Cemetery in Austin. Leslie has a master's in historic preservation, a bachelor's in architecture from the University of Texas System, and an associate's in interior design from Botter College. Danielle and Leslie, we are so glad you could join us tonight. Share your expertise and your knowledge on this important subject. Take it away. Okay.
Let me share my screen. Hopefully you see a nice big red screen.
We do.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Christy. And thank you to the friends for asking me to present this. And I'm glad that Danielle agreed to join me on this little endeavor. So I'm going to talk about African-American travel guides to get us started, and then preservation scholar intern Danielle Dixon will finish off with historically Black colleges and universities, which was her project that she worked on this past summer for me. I became aware of the existence of African-American travel guides around 2014 through the Bankhead Highway Survey Project. These booklets were like AAA travel guides, but they were meant for Black travelers who faced discrimination while traveling around the country during the modern Jim Crow era. To avoid these unwelcome situations, they used various travel guides to locate places where they could purchase gas, get a haircut, buy a meal, sleep for the night, or enjoy some entertainment. It was one of those pivotal moments for me, as I hadn't realized this was needed. Being intrigued by this topic, I wanted to know if this was something we could research and document in Texas. It could be an inventory survey project based on the theme of African-American travel guide sites, so that falls within my purview as a historic resources survey coordinator. I'm going to walk you through the process that I took to get where the project currently is. The project started in 2019 and is still ongoing as I speak. So I wanted to know how many were in Texas, where were they located, how many are still extant, what has already been done out there nationally, are there grants to pay for the project, how can we tell the stories for each site, what travel guides listed Texas sites. I wanted it to be more than just a web page of pins with names and addresses. Okay, so how did this project get started? Greg Smith, the National Register Coordinator at the THC, happens to collect African-American historical information, which included various travel guides. So I utilized his files as well as the New York Public Library's Green Book digital collection to round out the project. Using these two resources, I set the parameters of the project. A resource had to be listed in these guides in order to be included. It would stop the project from going off on tangents for related sites, preventing project creep. The 9 travel guides used for this project are the Negro Motorist Green Book, Hackley and Harrison's Guide, the Chauffeur's Traveler's Bureau, the Negro Handbook, Grayson's Guide, the Travel Guide, the Go Guide to Pleasant Motoring, the Nationwide Hotel Association Directory, and the Bronze American. I'm going to talk briefly about each travel guide to show you how they were different and also how they were similar. I'll start with the Negro Motorist Green Book because it is the best known, but it wasn't the first. More commonly known as just the Green Book, it was established in 1936, but no known copies of the 36th edition have been found. The 1937 edition only ran 10 pages in length of New York locations and a couple of New Jersey sites. It was not published during World War II. Its name changed in 1952 to the Negro Traveler's Green Book, rather than motorists, because it could be used for any mode of transportation, not just car travel. The name changed again in 1963 to the Traveler's Green Book International Edition, indicating its expansion into other countries. The Harlem, New York postal worker, Victor Hugo Green, started the Green Book with his wife, Alma. She later took over publishing in 1952 and had an all-female staff. The purpose of the guide was to give the Negro traveler information that will keep him from running into difficulties, embarrassments, and to make his trips more enjoyable. It became an indispensable tool for safely navigating in the age of sundown towns, segregation, and lynchings. The Green Book was modeled after 2 publications. The first one was the Automobile Green Book, which was a map guide for the East Coast that was published by the Automobile Legal Association. This appears to have been like AAA travel maps. The other publication was the Kosher Food Guide of New York City. Published quarterly, it listed approved packaged foods that met kosher requirements. It also listed hotels, summer resorts, and camps that catered to Jewish travelers. The Green Book combined features from both publications. Originally starting in New York City, it spread throughout the Northeast. Texas was added in 1939. It eventually went international to include Canada, the Caribbean, Latin America, Europe, and Africa. It was the longest lasting publication and the most widely distributed, with a circulation of an estimated 2 million, starting in 1936 and ending in 1967. It started out priced at 25 cents and finished at $1. By the mid-1940s, it was available at SO gas stations throughout the nation. Another guide is the Hackley and Harrison's Hotel and Apartment Guide. According to Mia Bay, the co-author of Race and Retail, this was the earliest African-American travel guide and was only around for 2 editions. This publication came about because W.E.B. Du Bois wrote to Sarah Harrison, the local Negro Welfare Council secretary, asking if there were any colored boarding houses in New London, Connecticut. The booklet was created in direct response to this inquiry, fulfilling a need at the time. Ms. Harrison teamed up with Edward Hackley, a journalist and lawyer. Here is Du Bois's letter dated November 8, 1929. Hackley and Harrison's guide only listed rooms and hotels. The guide's introduction says that the greatest inconvenience and annoyance of automobile travel has been its lack of knowledge of desirable and hospitable hotel and apartment accommodations. This guide has been compiled to afford an authentic and reliable reference list of hotels and private apartments in principal cities in every state, with assurance of courteous reception. The Hackley and Harrison's guide was only published twice, as Mr. Hackley died shortly after the first publication, and Ms. Harrison didn't continue the effort on her own. The Chauffeurs Travelers Bureau was based in Springfield, Missouri, and referred to its guide as the Chauffeurs Highway Atlas. This is not dated, but based on my research so far, the listings in the guide correlate to listings in city directories dating to the early 1930s. This guide listed the state and city populations, with Black populations broken out, and then extensive listings of restaurants, gas stations, information sources, doctors, Black colleges, YMCAs and YWCAs, retail shops, libraries, etc. On the back page of this guide is a typed section that has extra sites in Austin. I don't know if this information was requested when the guide was ordered or if someone just added them at a later date. Next is the Federal Division of Negro Affairs in the Office of the Secretary of Commerce, which was established in 1933, and it published what it called a tentative listing of Black hotels. The copy in Greg's files is the 1937 list. Some of the hotels are followed by letters: S for single rooms, D for double rooms, and G for garage on site or a garage within 4 blocks of the hotel. And as you can see, this is a rather short list. The Negro Handbook is a different example, as it is an almanac of 269 pages of African-American business statistics. The copy we had just contained the hotel listing page, which you see here. Unlike other guides, Grayson's guide is organized by city rather than by state. It debuted in 1937. It billed itself as a national directory of hotels, cafes, resorts, motels, where civil rights are extended to all. The listing included a wide variety of types: restaurants, hotels and rooms, nightclubs, cleaners, morticians, pharmacies, radio repair, medical clinics, grocery stores, theaters, amongst others. This guide was particularly helpful as it included advertisements with photos, as you can see here for Hotel Whitney in Beaumont. This advertisement also tells us who the proprietor was, and that in addition to being Beaumont's newest and finest hotel, it had a cafe and lounge with dining and drinking options, and you could book rooms by the day or by the week. This advertisement photo here was instrumental in my being able to find the physical location of the hotel. The address was at the edges of 3 different Sanborn maps, and many of the buildings in the area had been demolished, as you can see in the current aerial view, all of which made it difficult to pinpoint its location at 2985 Pine Street. Using historical aerial photos, I located the hotel on Pine Street based on the dormer seen in the advertisement, which you can see here in the 3 images. The travel guide was published from 1947 to 1963. Its tagline was "Vacation and Recreation Without Humiliation," and it touted itself as a directory of accommodations that welcome the patronage of all. It included listings of hotels, organizations, restaurants, service stations, colleges, cleaners, doctors, dentists, lawyers, etc. It provided points of interest for each state. Texas had the Big Bend National Park, Longhorn Cavern State Park, Lower Rio Grande Valley, Mineral Wells, Palo Duro Canyon State Park, Prairie View State College, along with the price for a fishing license and speed laws. The Go Guide to Pleasant Motoring was published from 1952 to 1965 by Andrew F. Jackson. Listings were limited to hotels and rooms along with YMCAs and YWCAs, as they typically provided overnight accommodations. The Go Guide featured places in the United States, Canada, Alaska, and Mexico. Alaska didn't become a U.S. state until 1959. The Nationwide Hotel Association and Directory Guide to, the Nationwide Hotel Association Directory and Guide to Travel's tagline was, "Where to go, what to see, and where to eat." Its Texas listings had hotels, motels, and restaurants. I like their introductory section that says its listed members have, and I'll quote, "pledged to maintain certain minimum standards. They are further urged and encouraged to have and maintain A1 moral standard, cleanliness throughout, friendly hospitality, excellent mattresses and springs, clean and inviting baths, modern heating, attractive appearance, comfortably furnished rooms, continuous hot water, proper lighting, and fair rates," end quote. I think I'd like to stay at one of these. The last travel guide, the Bronze American, had a forward section that read, "Racial discrimination has been and still is a very dominant feature on the American scene. Therefore, the Bronze American Travel Guide has been specifically designed to eliminate, as much as possible, the embarrassment of being refused accommodations based on race, creed, or color." So even in the early 1960s, these travel guides were still a necessary part of Black travel. At $2.50, this guide was the most expensive one, was more expensive than the Green Book, which was only $1. Listings for Texas included hotels, tourist homes, motels, restaurants, service stations, YMCAs, and beauty shops. Victor Green's hope came true. There will be a day sometime in the near future when this guide will not have to be published. That is when we, as a race, will have equal opportunities and privileges in the United States. It will be a great day for us to suspend this publication, for then we can go wherever we please and without embarrassment. But until that time comes, we shall continue to publish this information for your convenience each year. The Civil Rights Act was signed into law on July 2nd, 1964 by President LBJ. The Green Book was last published in 1967. Okay, so now moving on from the travel guides to the project itself, here is the Texas list created from a total of 34 different travel guides of 43 towns, followed by the number of resources in the community. The towns with the most sites are Houston with 110, Dallas with 83, San Antonio 79, Beaumont 49, Austin 45, Galveston 42, and Fort Worth with 41. There are approximately 780 individual sites, as some may turn out to be duplicates, but more research is needed to clarify that. To get started, I created an Excel spreadsheet for the individual sites. This contained the information that were in the guides: city, name, address, publication name, published year, number in the publication, and historic type. As many businesses advertise in several different guides and/or in multiple years, the total number of sites expanded to over 3,600 listings. You can see here that the Deluxe Hotel had 7 listings in Green Books and the Travel Guide, while the Angelina Motel had 3 listings in the Bronze American and the Go Guide. Notice the differences in the spelling of Deluxe and the name of Navasota, as well as the address number. Mistakes and typos were not uncommon. Next up was to verify their locations and to see if the building still existed or not. Using the listed addresses, I located each site using Google Maps and Google Street Views. Once I located the sites, I added the latitude-longitude coordinates to the spreadsheet, as well as whether the building still existed or not. If the building still existed per Google Views, then I added a Y for yes in the status column. And I also changed the black text to red to easily distinguish extant from non-extant on the spreadsheet. Seen here is the Fraser's Tourist Home in Austin. I downloaded the Google Street Views of buildings as I researched locations for each resource, as I was worried that some sites might get demolished before we had a chance to photograph them. This house is listed on the National Register of Historic Places under Criterion A in the area of ethnic heritage and under Criterion C in the area of architecture, as a good example of a late 19th century I-plan house. It is also an Austin historic landmark. I use Sanborn fire insurance maps to verify the footprint of the buildings to see if what exists today is the same as what historically existed, or if it had been expanded or demolished and replaced. African-American resources generally tend to be less architecturally significant than the Fraser tourist home that you see here. Many will be typical commercial buildings or modest homes, and it is for this reason that research of the sites is important. You can't assess these resources by physical appearance alone. Here's a more typical example of a travel guide resource. The architecture is not impressive, but as I just said, it is the cultural history that is important. The Victory Grill is listed on the National Register of Historic Places under Criterion A in the area of music and entertainment, and is a City of Austin landmark. The Victory Grill became known for its music as well as its food and drink. The club began attracting music lovers no matter what their race. During its heyday in the 1950s, most of the popular national blues, rhythm and blues, and jazz acts that played Austin performed at the Victory Grill. Ike and Tina Turner, James Brown, Billie Holiday, Chuck Berry, Etta James, and Janis Joplin were some of the artists who graced the stage. The Victory Grill houses one of the oldest blues venues in the state. Johnny Holmes founded the establishment in 1945 as a restaurant and bar, accommodating African Americans who could not go to other blues clubs in segregated Austin. Holmes added the Kovac Room in 1951, providing performance space for such blues legends such as B.B. King, Bobby Blue Bland, and Big Joe Williams. The Victory Grill was a stop on the Chitlin Circuit, a network of Southern clubs that gave African American performers access to venues during segregation. Even if the sites are no longer extant, we can still tell their stories based on the research and information uncovered. For example, opened in 1935 by George and Sadie Jones, the Harlem Theater of Austin served the Black community until 1973 when it burned down. It was one of only 7 Black-owned movie theaters in the country. It wasn't until 1951 that it got its first white owner. The theater was known for its chili burgers along with other typical movie treats. Movie prices were 15 cents for adults and 5 cents for children 11 and under. All positions were filled with Black employees except for the projectionist due to the motion picture machine operator agency not being integrated until the 1960s. Once I had verified as many as I could, I transferred the data into Google Earth, which created a map of the resources using the latitude-longitude coordinates. Of the approximately 780 resources, only about 20% are still extant, although about 18% aren't accounted for yet, leaving approximately 65% no longer extant. The red pins indicate the resource has been demolished and the green ones are extant. One thing I noticed when looking at the various communities across Texas is how the resources tended to be grouped together, some communities more so than others. This shows us that African Americans tended to work and live in clustered areas, showing segregation at work. On the left is Amarillo, and the sites are grouped closely together northwest of downtown and near the railroad tracks. In the middle is Dallas, where most of the resources are clustered north of downtown. Many of these resources were demolished when the Central Expressway was built in the 1950s and in more recent years due to gentrification. On the right is San Antonio, where the sites are clustered east of downtown and the railroad tracks. Because of the COVID shutdown, my interns and I have done mostly online research of city directories to find proprietor names and advertisements, and on the Portal to Texas History website and other websites to find newspaper articles, advertisements, and photos. On this slide, the Chauffeur's Traveler's Bureau Guide lists Dr. C.A. Whittier of San Antonio, whose address is 928 East Crockett, as well as the entry in the Excel spreadsheet. Utilizing city directories, I can look him up by name, by address, and by type, which could be physician, doctor, clinic, or hospital. The listings revealed some information that I didn't know before: his first name of Charles, his wife's name, and his home address. Gaining experience as I researched, I found that searching every available edition of a town's city directories from 1925 to 1970 is helpful. Information, as well as the lack of it, can reveal when the business started, if it moved location, if it expanded to have multiple locations, when it went out of business, if the proprietor name or business name changed, who the partners were, etc. It also helps to understand how the naming of types changed over time. For example, a room for the night might be listed as boarding house, furnished rooms, lodging, or hotel in the earlier decades, Later on, it might be listed as tourist court, motor court, or motel. The same thing with gas stations. They could be listed under garage, auto repair, filling station, or service station. Here's a page out of the Green Book for Corpus Christi for the Square Deal restaurant. Going to a Corpus Christi city directory, we learned that the owner's name was Sam Singleton and the proper business title was Square Deal Bar and Cafe. And we can confirm the address of 810 Winnebago. Also, notice the C here in two places that indicates that the business is for coloreds and that the owner is colored. Not all businesses listed in these travel guides were owned by African Americans, as one might assume. So now I can do research on the owner as well as the business name. Sometimes the owners had multiple businesses and were prominent citizens. In doing city directories research, it was interesting to note that the number of resources increased after World War II. However, the number of resources still in business started to decline the further into the 1960s I got. This is due to the passing and enforcement of civil rights laws and the African American determination to utilize businesses not previously available to them. This had the unfortunate consequence of driving Black-owned entities out of business due to lack of patronage. Besides city directories, other sources can help build the stories, such as advertisements, postcards, historical photographs, and articles, such as you see here. Moving on to what we have created since the start of the project is the African American Travel Guide Survey Project webpage that includes a brief background, an interactive map, a list of the various travel guides used in the project, a listing of all the counties and communities with sites, and linked web pages of research, such as the interns, posters, and thematic topics. At the moment, the interactive map has blue pins for known demolished sites and red pins for known extant sites. A handful of resources are not included on here as their exact locations aren't currently known. They had vague addresses such as an intersection or Highway 6 or the Moody Edition or no address at all. For these, I conducted research using city directories available at the Texas State Library and online. I managed to cull down the list of unknowns quite a bit doing this. However, that still left me with about 40 unknowns that will need local research. By clicking on a pin, you get a pop-up window with the name, historic type, coordinates, status, and address. This pop-up window has minimal information right now, but will be expanded upon as research moves forward. With a more fully developed pop-up window that looks similar to this mock-up page for Dr. Whittier. Each site will have basic information such as name, address, historic type, what travel guides it was listed in and what years, and if it has any historical designations already, such as National Register or recorded Texas Historic Landmark. An image would be included, preferably a current or historical photograph. Then we can add historical content about the business and or proprietors in the text at the bottom left, or in images seen on the right. Here's an abbreviated version of Dr. Whittier's information researched and written by intern Yumeng Liu. Dr. Charles Austin Whittier Jr. was born in 1891 in Wascom, Texas. He completed his higher education at Baptist Academy, Shreveport, Louisiana, and Wiley College in Marshall, Texas. In 1917, Whittier graduated from the historically Black Meharry Medical College in Nashville, Tennessee. During World War I, he was a first lieutenant in the Medical Reserve Corps. After being discharged, he practiced medicine in Victoria, Texas for 6 months before he moved to San Antonio in 1919. Whittier established the Whittier Clinic in 1927 in a house at 928 East Crockett Street. He performed minor surgeries and had 2 overnight rooms for his patients and for other African American patients who needed post-operative care, but were not allowed to stay overnight at regular hospitals. He provided free medical care to the unemployed and needy on Saturday mornings. His advertisements in the San Antonio Register newspaper boasted of having the most complete outpatient clinic anywhere with x-rays, physical therapy, and laboratory services, and the most modern and successful methods in treating all diseases. In 1932, he was admitted to the Bexar County Medical Society, a notably progressive organization as many medical associations in the state at the time had a white-only policy. Whittier became president of the Black Member National Medical Association in 1948. In May 1955, Dr. Whittier, along with Dr. Ruth Ann Bellinger, was admitted to the Bexar County Medical Society, becoming the first African-American members in the state of Texas. In July 1955, the Santa Rosa Hospital granted Dr. Whittier staff membership, becoming the first hospital in the region to name African-American doctors to its staff. Whittier was a longtime advocate in civil rights affairs and spearheaded the financial drive for the NAACP to break down the Texas whites-only primaries. He retired in 1965 and passed away in 1969. Another end product will be a searchable database with options of city, county, historic type, publications, and years listed. These options may be adjusted based on information accrued, but options may be limited due to the flexibility of the web frame. I've been fortunate enough to have had 4 interns assisting on this project so far. 3 of the interns researched a town of their choice, selected a handful of sites to research, and created a poster. Sydney Landers in the summer of 2019 did the Austin poster. Yumeng Liu in the fall of 2020 chose San Antonio, and Monica Palacios in the summer of 2022 also selected San Antonio, and I think that's actually 2021, I apologize there. These can be found on the project website. And then this past summer, my 4th intern, Danielle Dixon, researched a thematic topic instead of doing a poster. She researched historically Black colleges and universities, otherwise known as HBCUs, that were listed in the travel guides. Shown here are other thematic topics that I'm hoping will get developed at some point. And now I'll turn the presentation over to Danielle to talk about her topic. Danielle?
Thanks, Leslie, and thank you all so much for being here. I'm really excited to share my research with you all. Leslie's work is critical, and it's been an honor to be a part of such a unique project. For the sake of time, I'm going to dive right in where Leslie left off, but first I wanted to give you all a little background information about myself. So growing up, my grandma always taught me the importance of Black history and the legacy my ancestors left behind. And my mom also taught me the importance of being outspoken and always standing up for what's right. So for these reasons, I focused most of my life's work on different trials and triumphs experienced by African Americans in United States history. I therefore wear my title as an African-American historian very pridefully, and I understand how it allows me to affect change. So when accepted into an internship program with the Friends of the Texas Historical Commission, I was very excited, and I was able to connect to Leslie's vision and some of my own personal interests. And in that way, we chose to highlight the historically Black colleges and universities in Texas. So you've already heard a ton about green books and travel guides and the importance of them in the African American community. Leslie's work really reflects how places for music and food, socialization, and so much more were integral to the Black community. These environments provided a place of comfort and refuge. And for these reasons, historically Black colleges were and will always be considered one of those safe spaces. Every day, Black students see reflections of themselves in their curriculum, in their school's leadership, and with their peers, which I'm sure positively influences so many aspects of their lives. It took a lot for historically Black colleges and universities to become what they are, however. So for the next several minutes, we're going to shift our gears to HBCUs and the journey to create them. These various green books and travel guides listed a total of 15 HBCUs in Texas. As the duration of this 10-week internship with the Texas Historical Commission commenced, I set out to vigorously research these 15 HBCUs and their rich legacies. I wanted to know who founded these HBCUs, which are extant, what was the process to achieving education during the mid-1800s, and how did HBCUs positively impact Black communities? Before diving right into some of my findings, I wanted to share with you all some of the places I utilized to find all of this information. Private Black Colleges in Texas, a book by Michael Heinz, proved to be one of the most fruitful sources for me, and it greatly detailed a lot of background information about the HBCUs in Texas, including their founding, but also public sentiment about the construction of Black colleges, various images, and so much more. If this book didn't include something, I was able to utilize its bibliography to find other sources of information. College websites were also extremely useful, and I looked to these websites at the very early stages of this project because I wanted to make sure to portray these schools in their most authentic light. So essentially, I looked at these websites to get a sense for how they perceived their own history, and then I used that as a basis for how I would establish my own tone in my writing. Of course, Leslie encouraged me to dig a little bit deeper, and she taught me how to search National Register nominations, historical markers, and Sanborn fire insurance maps. And since this was a fully remote internship, I also had the opportunity to explore various websites that had a plethora of digitized images, interviews, scholarship, and so much more. All in all, I think Leslie and I developed a really well-rounded repository of research that allowed us to see and feel the energy of these campuses from all standpoints. I've included here on the right-hand side of the screen an example of something we found in the Texas City Directory. And this is where Texas College was founded in 1894. Images like this provided so much context for us because they talked about the different types of classes and degrees offered. Texas College, for example, incorporated everything from music to writing and sciences and offered bachelor's degrees and teaching certifications. Here's an example of what a Sanborn fire insurance map looks like. And these maps were created to allow fire insurance companies to assess their total liability in urbanized areas. This map you're looking at shows the construction of the newer Guadalupe College campus, which was in Seguin, Texas. And Leslie and I utilized these maps to get a sense of the property and individual buildings on campus. All in all, I think it's just really important for you all to envision the many avenues we took to explore the history of HBCUs so you can have a greater appreciation for the story I'm about to tell. This is the story of Black education and the rise of HBCUs in Texas. As one could imagine, throughout much of the 19th and 20th centuries, educational opportunities for African Americans were sporadic and unreliable, especially in Texas and other southern states. At the Civil War's end, most Black Texans faced a lack of social, political, and economic equality, despite the abolition of slavery. With the rise of religious organizations, however, efforts towards establishing educational environments for newly freed African American men, women, and children began to emerge. And as a result, Black schools were equipped to provide elementary, intermediate, secondary, and college level education. It is essential to note that racist stereotypes permeated the creation of education for African Americans. Many Southern and Northern whites viewed newly free African Americans as illiterate or intellectually inferior. Some believed providing higher education to former slaves was a waste of the state's resources. They feared educated African Americans would stop providing cheap agricultural and industrial labor or encourage rebellion. There is even documentation of white groups burning down Black schools to intimidate white missionary teachers. Although this sentiment was not unanimous in Texas, many white Americans relied on these beliefs to keep a stronghold over the trajectory of Black education. Still, African Americans persisted in pursuing resources, human rights, and academic spaces for their communities. And with the help of renowned organizations such as the Freedmen's Bureau, which was established by United States Congress in 1865, and other various missionary societies, African Americans began seeing some of their dreams realized. By the end of 1865, the Freedmen's Bureau, with the help of missionary societies, established 16 schools for African Americans. By 1866, they established more than 100. And by 1871, enrollment peaked at 4,478 Black students enrolled in schools across Texas. The first Black college in Texas was Paul Quinn College. Paul Quinn College had a total of 3 campuses, and the first was in Austin in 1872 and was known as the Connectual School for the Education of Negro Youth. In 1877, they moved to Waco on a larger plot of land where they were able to expand their campus offerings and become an official college campus. In 1990, the campus moved to Dallas, Texas, where it remains as the oldest African-American liberal arts college in Texas. Today, Paul Quinn College continues to grow and evolve. It's developed what they call a new urban college model, which has made tuition and fees a lot more affordable and also implements the use of free textbooks in their classes. They've even built a sustainable farm that produces more than 30,000 pounds of fresh organic produce to supply to the campus and Dallas community. Their slogan, "We over me," is said to be forged through times of struggle and strive. They believe their students make the world a better place by centering the needs of the community over the wants of the individual. Paul Quinn College is considered a rarity of its time because it was founded by African Americans for African Americans. This means it had a Black president and Black faculty members from its inception. And this is unlike many other HBCUs, which were founded and governed by white people. Before we explore that more, I wanted to include some images for you here. So the image you see to your left shows the entrance of Paul Quinn College at the Waco campus in 1970. And the image you see to your right is of the college's state champion football team in 1922. I wanted to further expand upon the faculty and leadership demographics of HBCUs in Texas. This is a vital facet to keep in mind and probably one of the most interesting things that I explored during my research. Most Black colleges were led and instructed by an all-white faculty. This meant everything from the school's president to the teachers and curriculum makers. Black Americans had a great appreciation for the opportunity to obtain education, but they still sought an environment where they could see reflections of themselves in the school's leadership and instruction. Unfortunately, they had to seek the approval of their white leaders to achieve this. Some white missionary leaders felt African Americans were not mature or capable enough to take on their own institutions. If they were to incorporate Black leadership and teachers, they wanted to do so slowly over time to ensure a more orderly and measured transition. Without question, this is something that Black Americans continue to work against, eventually finding some success in their activism. The image you see here is of Wiley College, which was established in 1873. It did not appoint its first Black president until 1894, and they did not construct an all-Black faculty until 1918. It took them 45 years to achieve this integration. Despite the lack of Black presence in leadership positions, many great African-American leaders and thinkers directed a lot of their efforts to the rise of Black intellectualism and leadership. It is therefore impossible to talk about the context of Black education without mentioning two pioneers, W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. These figures represent two distinctly different viewpoints surrounding the educational curriculum and class offerings at HBCUs. Booker T. Washington, pictured here in 1910, was the president of Tuskegee Institute, an HBCU founded in Alabama in 1881. He and his followers believed in the strength of an industrial-based education. Their beliefs felt that by mastering vocational skills, African Americans could better assimilate into American society. They felt these skills were better suited for the needs of Black Americans at that time. This did not mean producing more farmers, but better yet, people who could teach farming and trading techniques to Black Americans across the South. On the contrary, W.E.B. Du Bois, pictured here in 1904, insisted on liberal arts instruction. Du Bois was a renowned scholar and activist who created the phenomenon of the talented 10th. And the talented 10th represents 1 in 10 Black men that have cultivated the ability to become leaders of the Black community by acquiring a college education. They would use this education to write books and become instrumental in social change. It would therefore be their responsibility to use their education as a vehicle to leading and bettering the Black community. All in all, these figures symbolize a schism in Black thought and a turning point in how African Americans saw their future. One thing they had in common, however, was their focus on the advancement of Black communities. Du Bois and Washington helped their communities think broader about financial independence and success. They looked to HBCUs as a gateway for these opportunities. They posed two very distinct, different questions. Should we be focused on a more agricultural, labor-intensive curriculum to teach the next generation of farmers and traders? Or should we take a more liberal arts approach and rely on education to develop our community's leaders and trailblazers? There is so much more that I could say about HBCUs in Texas, their legacy, and how important they have been and will continue to be to Black communities across the nation. But I wanted to take the time to showcase how I took all this information and turned it into web pages. As Leslie mentioned previously, earlier interns worked on a more visual presentation, creating posters to showcase their research at the end of their internship. This go around, Leslie wanted to do something fresh that could be housed on the Texas Historical Commission's website permanently. And I'll admit, I was initially a little nervous taking on the creation of 16 web pages, but in the end, I'm so happy with the finished project. So I'm going to shift our focus a little bit to a few screen grabs of what you can expect when looking at these web pages. It is our hope that tonight's conversation is just a starting point in your interest and that you'll utilize these web pages I've created as a way to learn more about this topic. The image you're seeing on your screen shows the first web page I created, and this web page is focused on the overall context of education for African Americans. It details some of the major court cases and leaders that shaped this period. On the right-hand side of this image, you'll see a zoomed in segment of all the hyperlinks. That way you can read about.
Is she frozen for anyone else? Okay. Danielle, you're frozen if you can hear us. We'll give her just a second. Thanks for bearing with us through these technical trying times. Appreciate your patience.
And if not, I can continue for her.
Looks like she's going to log back in. Let's give her just a sec. She's such a great speaker. I'm so enjoying hearing her talk about this. And I hope the links that I'm putting into the chat aren't too distracting. I just wanted you to have them. We will also send out an email tomorrow with a link to this recording, but I will also include the links to these pages that I'm putting in the chat. So don't worry if you're having a hard time keeping up with those. We will provide them in an email. And more. We've got a couple more resources to share as well. So. And just a reminder, if you have questions, now's the time to put them into the chat. We'll get to as many as we can as soon as Danielle reaches the end of her part of the presentation. So thank you guys so much for all the really great questions that we've had so far. Here she is. Great. Danielle, are you there?
I'm here. Can you?
Okay. Yes, we can hear you. We were all just excited for you to come back and keep going. So,
you know, I really felt like I was in a groove, but that's okay.
You were doing amazingly. So we'll just let you kind of pick back up where you feel comfortable and keep going. So thank you.
Okay, no problem. I see here we're still on the slide about just that initial page.
We're just about to finish that page.
Okay, perfect. So yes, this is the initial page that I made, and it essentially just talks about the establishment of HBCUs and education in Black communities in a general context. But as you can see on the right-hand side, it provides a bunch of hyperlinks so that you can click on each of the individual colleges and learn more information about them. If you scroll to the bottom of this page, you'll see a Google map, one very similar to the one that Leslie showed us, but you can interact with this, and the red pins represent HBCUs that are still in service, and the black pins showcase campuses that are defunct or no longer in service. There are tons of individuals and organizations who are attempting to preserve the land of once standing HBCUs or to identify them as historical markers. So you can click on each of these pins and bring up these articles, coordinates, Google images, and so much more. Also featured on this first initial page is an additional resource material link. And if you click this link, it'll take you to a list of books, films, documentaries, and articles that I use to have a better understanding of HBCUs and their importance in the Black community. I also wanted to quickly show you an example of one of the college pages. So here we have Wiley College as our example, and this page, like all the others, has a list of information at the very top. It includes the school's websites, geographical coordinates, travel guide listings, historical listings, and so much more. I've also created a timeline for each of the colleges so you can see their history at a glance. As you continue to scroll down these college pages, you'll see a pretty extensive section of the college's history. And I also wanted to note that Leslie and I chose a more simple and kind of streamlined format intentionally, just in case you wanted to print this webpage and use its findings for any of your own research. Lastly, and probably one of my favorite elements to all of these web pages is the photo gallery. And you can find the photo gallery at the very bottom of the page. Each college has a gallery that contains a bunch of images Leslie and I found while researching. And I really loved looking at the architecture of the buildings and being able to see pictures of student populations. Seeing pictures of Black men and women doing science experiments and putting on school plays made me so happy. It was unlike anything that I've seen before, and it just made me feel really prideful. But as always, each image has a caption, and that will lead you to the exact location we found these images. As we round out the end of this presentation, I wanted to quickly touch on my lasting impressions. And if I were to identify one major takeaway from the creation of this project and this internship, it would be Black education matters, representation matters, and history certainly does too. I think most importantly, this project allowed me to bring some joy to Black history, which is a topic that can oftentimes be riddled with trauma and sadness. So I hope that when anyone looks to my work, they can share with me this sense of pride in the incredible Black Americans who came before us and fought for the privileges we experience today. I also hope my research gives you all the courage and inspiration you need to go on and be someone despite any barriers placed against you. And this concludes my segment of the presentation. So thank you all so much.
Oh my goodness, I wish we could do a rounding applause. Excellent job, Danielle, and so many compliments for you in the chat box. I know you were busy presenting and probably couldn't see them, but
yeah, I didn't want to get thrown off, but yes, thank you so much.
So much good stuff. So now I think we will move into the Q&A, which I'm going to just proceed first come, first serve through the chat. If I get to your question and you feel like you want to unmute yourself and converse, please feel free to do that. Otherwise, we'll get to as many as we can before 7:30. We'll kind of call 7:30 the end of the Q&A. So again, a reminder, we will send out links and resources and a copy of this recording via email sometime tomorrow. So as we're talking about resources, just know you'll get an email with those in there. Okay. Let me scroll up to the top here. So Tim asked, Leslie, this was your part of the presentation. What year did ESSO, and I hope I'm saying that right, make their green book available at their gas stations? Any idea?
For a precise year, I don't know, but I know by the 1940s they were available nationwide. I think you're going to be making some links available in your emails tomorrow, but two very good books that I heavily relied on were Driving While Black by Gretchen Soren, and then Overground Railroad by Candace E. Taylor were excellent resources for my background research on this, and that's probably where I got the information from.
Thanks, Leslie. Yes, we'll include that in the email. Okay, so Raylan is asking, is the spreadsheet available for view? And I think she's talking about the spreadsheet where you had the addresses.
It is not available right now because the project is still ongoing. Okay. Eventually it might be, but all the information that is on the spreadsheet will be uploaded into those searchable databases and the web links on the map and things like that. But currently it is not. But if you are interested, go ahead and email and I can probably share it with you, especially if you want to volunteer to do research for me, because I am looking for volunteers.
So we will include Leslie's contact information if she gives me her blessing to do so in the email. Yes. And that way, Raylan, maybe you can connect with Leslie on that. Okay. T is asking, in what year was the recent picture of the Vincent Grill taken, and is the building still present and available? Someone followed up to that and said, yes, the building is still there, but maybe the other part of the question or anything else that you know about.
It is still extant on the address that was on the slide, which is in East Austin, I believe on 11th Street. I don't think it's open for business anymore, but I could be wrong on that. But every time I drive by it, it looks closed, but I'm not there at night. Which is if it's having music still, that would be probably when it would be showing, but the building is still there.
I wanted to also ask Laretha Clay. She is one of our Friends board members, and she is also one of the founders of the Preservation Scholars Program. I wanted to see, Laretha, do you feel like coming off mute and saying a couple words, maybe talking about the researching option that you mentioned in the chat? Not to put you on the spot.
Yes, really.
So sorry.
You put me on the spot, and unfortunately I was oh gosh, you can't see me. Oh well. And unfortunately I was answering a text when you asked.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, I can come back to you in a minute if that works.
But what I'm not sure. Oh, my deal was when Leslie was going over all her, how she was finding out finding out more information on the different businesses, and I was just thinking, about ads and church circulars, or when church anniversaries and things like that, and ads in yearbooks, because I know a lot of these, especially HBCUs and even some of the Black high schools, in order to raise money, they would sell ads for their yearbooks and so forth, and you would get a lot of information about where the business was located and and things like that. So that was my questions. And then also I was really happy to see so much Beaumont stuff in there, especially since I know most of those people that were mentioned in the Beaumont stuff, especially like Sprott Hospital. I definitely remember that when I was growing up. Sprott Hospital, and knew the Sprotts, knew Dr. Sprott, know their kids still alive, know where they are and everything. So
since I have you here, I'm wanting to get that building nominated on the National Register, but Greg didn't have much luck in actually connecting with the Sprott family. So you can be my contact for that.
Yeah, did you talk to Lloyd? Lloyd is one of the sons, and Maxie Jr.
Greg was wanting to make the connection first because he is the National Register and he knows the right way to ask questions and answer any of their questions that they might have that I might not be able to answer properly. But that is a great little story, because it was actually ended up being 3 doctors of the Sprott family in that one clinic hospital, which is a great story right there. And then their father, I believe, was a postal worker, and their mother and I think some of their sisters were teachers, I believe. Anyway, there's so many stories coming out of all these different sites. It's
Yeah, because
sometimes a little hard.
I'm thinking of the one Maxie Sprott family, but there were some other Sprotts there as well. So maybe some of those people are the
I
ones you're
think
thinking
the
about.
3 Sprott doctors were probably Maxim's parents or grandparents.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm happy to help with that.
Good.
Oh.
Loretha,
Thank you.
thank you.
But did you like think of the yearbooks and church circulars and things like
I
that?
haven't, but a lot of those are also found on the handbook, not the handbook, the portal to Texas history website.
Mhm.
I'm still digging through city directory research so I can lay the foundation for the interns and all the other research that can come from it. Because without a proper address, without knowing who the proprietors are and the proper name of the businesses, it's hard to do any kind of research.
Mhm.
So that's where I am. I just finished up all the ancestry.com online city directories for each town. So now I'm going to be making little quick trips over to the Texas State Library to go through their physical city directories for those ones that aren't online. So my digging continues.
And then to Danielle, my question would be about any research that you've done to, for the colleges that are not there. So like Houston was a college, and then Tillerson was one, and then they combined. And then like where Paul Quinn is today, that used to be Bishop College. And then Bishop went out of business or went bank, whatever happened, but it went out of business. And now Paul Quinn is at the Bishop campus. So do you have like any information about, how they combined or went out of business or things like that?
Oh yeah, yes. All of those hyperlinks that lead to the colleges, it greatly details all that stuff. And I also in my writing have citations, so you can look and see which websites and books and online, digitized archives and all that stuff that we found. But yes, it was really hard to figure out what information was important and how to condense it all into the individual websites, because each of the colleges were so rich with information. So, but yes, all the websites detail every campus they moved to, how much they paid for it, perhaps, or why they moved and who was instrumental in purchasing the land and all that good stuff.
Because funny story, well, not funny story, but interesting story. My aunt, my father's sister, was very involved in the Baptist convention that was raising money for Bishop. And she would come to Dallas every year for some big convention or whatever. And when she got to be older, she could barely see. And so my sister and I would laugh about how you'd have to lead her up to the door to the big banquet or whatever they had, because she could barely see. But once she got in that door, you would think she could see, oh, hey, Sister so-and-so, hey, and she would just go work the room, and so forth. So that was my personal experience with raising money for Bishop, was going to these conferences every year with my aunt while she worked the room and tried to get money and so forth for Bishop. So I was very, very disappointed. And my sister worked at Bishop when they went under and helped. She was an accountant, so she helped, do all the last minute or the last straw of finances or whatever. But we were really sad about Bishop going under because of my aunt's affiliation with it.
Yeah, I understand. It's an important place. But yes, I'm definitely happy to see you here as well. Loretha actually sponsored me as a student to attend the IS symposium. So I was able to go and listen to all this amazing Black research. And I was just like, wow, I want to do this one day. So I'm happy to be here and to see you.
Okay.
Loretha, it's such an honor for you to join us, and thank you for coming on camera.
Okay.
And off mute.
Okay.
Thank you. It's always an honor. I hope you all will permit me to do a brief plug about the Preservation Scholars Program. The program is one that we run here. It's an internship, it's paid, it's 10 weeks long, and Danielle just finished up with the 2022 cohort, and I just put a link in the chat. We do accept donations for that, and if you're an educator with a university, if you could please spread the word about our program to your students, we would surely appreciate that. We definitely want as many students as possible to know about the program and apply. Thank you. Now back to questions.
Christy, this is
Please.
Anjali. I just wanted to jump in, and since you made a plug for the Preservation Scholars Program, I just wanted to recognize one of our former scholars, Jason Rivas, who's also on this call, who I think was instrumental, and I think Danielle connected with him as well. And I just wanted to share, for those of you, again, just to follow what Christy said, this is such a great opportunity for networking for students who are looking to get into the world of historic preservation. And we're slowly starting to build the network of our what we call our graduates from the program. And Jason is on here, and I just wanted to say hello to Jason. And you know, he graduated from the program, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, and he is a professional in the world of historic preservation. And we're so proud of that, and so thrilled that you could join us, Jason.
Thank you, Anjali. And I don't know if there are other board members who might want to jump in that are on the call tonight. Please message me if you're here and want to jump in and make a comment. But yes, we're very proud of our Preservation Scholars Program and of our scholars who have, many of them have gone on to do some pretty amazing things, either as academics or in the field of historic preservation with other organizations, and increasing the representation in a field that has traditionally lacked representation. So this is a huge sea change that we are trying to make happen here with the program, and we're so proud of all the work that's gone into that, and I feel honored to be a part of talking about that program even right now. Okay, let me catch up to the questions. I think we were on I think we were on the one from Jennifer Riccardi. Please correct me if I'm wrong. If I missed one, please let me know. This question is there something that we can do to help further the research?
If you have the time and you want to do research on these sites, I am more than happy to have you help me. I'm a one-person team until I can get more interns to help me, which I get usually every summer. So it's a humongous project that could go on for years, if not decades, by myself. So yes, I'm looking for volunteers. On the website is the list of the towns that are involved and how many sites are within those individual towns. And then you can contact me via my email to let me know which towns you're interested in. And then I can send you the spreadsheet and off you go doing the research. Or if you know somebody in those towns that might know something about the various sites, let me know that as well, because that's always a good place for me to go digging next. For example, Hitchcock down by Galveston had about a handful of maybe 6 sites. They didn't have a city directory online. They don't have a city directory at the Texas State Library. Their library doesn't have anything online. So I was stumped. So I took a road trip down to Galveston and Hitchcock, and I just happened to make connection with a former THC commissioner, and his grandmother still lives in Hitchcock. And so he set up for me to go interview his grandmother while I was down there. And I found one of the buildings and it was still extant. And then they gave me general locations of where they thought the other 3 to 5 sites were. So I'm further along than I was before. So those little connections can help me just that little bit further along in the project. So that would be appreciated.
Thank you. That was a great question. Okay, next one that I'm seeing is by Karen. Is it permitted to show this presentation to other groups within Texas? Do we have to schedule all of the presenters, do it live again? This recording will be up on Facebook, so it will already be public. And correct me if I'm wrong, is there another version of this presentation that's already posted somewhere, Leslie, Danielle?
Not of this one.
Okay. So yeah, you will have a link. So it's going to be living on our Facebook page. So you are welcome to share that. And I will also send you a link to that in the email. And you'll have contact information also in the email to Leslie. So if there's more questions you want to ask about that, you can email her. Okay, and lots of comments about folks who have lived in Beaumont and know some of the things that you were talking about, and lots of gratitude to you both. Danielle, lots of cheers for your presentation. So please scroll through that before you hop off tonight's Zoom. Okay, another question for Leslie. What are some of the other themes that you might have interns tackle in future years? And will you also be doing more Texas cities and their travel guide sites?
Yes, yes, and yes. For themes connecting up with Beaumont, I was getting really hungry doing Beaumont research because they had at least 2 barbecue joints, and the advertisements were talking about their barbecued chicken and brisket and beef and pork and sausage and all this kind of stuff, and they had eat in. And interestingly enough, they allowed whites to eat there, which I thought was a nice change of pace. So barbecue would be a topic, food, music, civil rights, medicine, music. I think I may have mentioned that already. Insurance would be an interesting one because insurance connected into buying cars as well as being able to buy your homes and things like that. So that is something to do with civil rights. And then beauty shops and barbershops, because they were hubs of many African-American communities of where everybody would meet up and share the gossip and not just to get your hair done. And one that I'm missing, YMCAs and YWCAs. Those are also community hubs. This is where you could go get your medical shots or hold events or do your sports workouts or put on your plays or stay the night, and so many different uses for the YMCAs and YWCAs. And there are still some that are extant and have really nice architectural styles. So that would be another one I'd really like to have an intern dig into. And then just to finish off real quick, all of the Texas cities that I've listed on my websites, all of them need to be researched, and all their sites need to be done. So like I said, this is a really long-term project and I need help.
What are the two barbecue places in Beaumont that you're talking about?
You're putting me on the spot there. I can email you that.
Oh, well, the reason I asked was because one of them, Patillo's, which is like the oldest. Okay. Patillo's actually, yeah, they serve white people, but they didn't serve Black people.
Okay.
So,
well, then I need to dig your brain on this.
Yeah, right. When I was growing, my mother knew Jack Patillo, who is the owner. And when I was growing up, we would take our she would take like chickens and stuff and take them there, and they would barbecue them for them. But we went, drove through and but we didn't go inside the restaurant and actually eat inside the restaurant.
Okay.
So.
And I think they had 2 or 3 different locations in Beaumont.
Yeah, at one point they had one on 11th Street, and the original one was on Washington Boulevard, and the one on Washington Boulevard is still there. But but anyway, so yeah, they serve whites, but they didn't serve Black people. Just letting you know.
You and I are going to have to talk.
Okay.
Thank you, Loretta. Sorry, I'm scrolling through and I'm trying to make sure I don't miss any questions. Okay. From Susan. No, sorry, we just asked that one. From Karen. How many businesses did you find that are still in business? Have you tracked down any of the former owners or staff for a bit of oral history?
I have not gotten that far in the project yet. That will be on my list of things to do when I finally get to that point. But like I said in my presentation part, only about 25% of the buildings still exist. And whether those buildings still have businesses in them of the same name is unknown at this point.
So we have an interesting question that's partly about gender, partly about African-American experience. So the question is, when were African-American women considered for educational leadership in Texas? Who were some of the first women, either faculty or administrators?
I feel like most of the leadership was men. I'm blanking on the college name, and Leslie, maybe you remember, it's here in San Antonio. I want to say
St.
St.
Philip's.
Philip's. Okay, yeah, St. Philip's College. They had a woman president who stayed and really changed the face of the entire college campus. I want to say she was involved with the school for over 20 years. I can't think of her name at this exact second, but that's the only female college president that I can think of that comes to mind. There's others.
Houston Tillotson.
Okay. Yes, but there was definitely a number of women in faculty positions for sure. But as far as leadership as actual presidents, that's a little less seen. Yes. Okay.
Could I may I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm a member. There were some women. One was a woman by the name of Bruce. Her last name was Bruce. Her husband was one of the first African-American senators. And she went to work at Tuskegee Institute as a principal in about 1901. But I was wondering if Texas was behind that or not.
That would have been out of the scope of our project. Like I said, there are so many interesting stories and so many potential rabbit trails that we could be going down that if we went down every rabbit trail, we would never get anywhere.
I just hate to see the name of these women leaders.
If you take a look at the website for St. Philip's, Artemisia Bowden is her name. She was the school's administrator and teacher from about 1902 for several decades. I think it was more than 20 years, but there's a picture of her as well as a link. And then Houston Tillotson, I think it was either a Mary Branch or Elizabeth Branch was the president for a while. And I believe she's also featured on the website. I'm not sure which. I think that may have been Tillotson.
Thank you very much.
But when women were featured in any of these schools, we did make a point of tooting their horns for them because they're no longer here to do it. As women, we appreciate that history as well.
Yes, definitely. Anything I'm blanking on, it's definitely in those web pages, images and YouTube videos, and absolutely anything that I could find on these incredible women.
Yeah, Miss Elizabeth Branch is her name, and she was the second African-American president of Tillotson College.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I say something?
Sure. Who's speaking, please?
Mozella Bolden.
Hi, Mozilla. I see you now. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, my first grade teacher was Lenore Jones Waters, and she also worked at Houston Tillotson. I think she was in business, or she was in administration. And also her husband was the director of the men's chorus back in the, I'd say that would be in the 70s. And Miss Waters is still alive. I went to her 80th birthday party in 2011, and I talked to her maybe about 2 months ago. So she's still alive, probably in the 90s age.
Wow,
So Danielle, you have an oral history background. And so does Jason Rivas, hint, hint. But yeah, I would love to get into the oral histories as well, but at the moment, that's not the focus. Down the line, definitely. But as these people who actually experience these times and places are aging, and so if someone has an interest in doing oral histories, I can certainly get you some sites to go talk to people. And Houston Tillotson has a really good history website attached to their main website. So if you're interested in knowing more about that, that's a good place to go digging.
Thank you, Leslie. It's so interesting to hear the stories from the community and directly from the person whose lived experience it is such an amazing thing to have. And it is sad when we lose these older ones.
If I may, Jarvis Christian College had a female president. I don't recall her name.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Oh, it's Jason. Jason Reeves is asking a question. What is the future of the project? Will it continue with another preservation scholar?
I hope so.
We're working on that right now, Jason.
I turned in my project proposal, so yes, I hope so.
Applications are open. So if again, if you are an educator or if you know of students who are currently enrolled and could use the internship, please direct them to our website.
And Jason, you've been a great ambassador for the program for us since you graduated. You've sent several students our way, so we're hoping that you're going to do that again this time.
Yes, and tomorrow Jason and I are actually going to go do an oral history together. So I'm really excited about that. We're going to be going out to Kendleton, Texas to interview the mayor so that that oral history can be housed at a museum there in Kendleton. So it's a freedman's town and I'm really excited to be a part of it. So yes, networking at its finest.
I think Anjali and Christy's mantra of network has sunk in.
Good. Well, that is the last of the questions that I can see in the chat. Again, we will send you an email with all of the fun links and definitely point you in the right direction if you're thinking of doing some research on your own, provide some, again, networking for you to connect with us. I will be sending the email. So if you have questions about preservation scholars, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm currently overseeing that program and would love to talk with you more about it. And then we will also provide Leslie's email and some book recommendations, links to THC's website. And we thank you all so much for being with us here tonight and supporting the work at the Texas Historical Commission and of the Friends of the Texas Historical Commission. And yes, Danielle, thank you so much. Danielle just put her contact information in the chat too. So a reminder, we are taking a break in January, but we will be back in February, hoping to kick off another year of really interesting topics for our virtual presentations. If you have an idea for a topic, I'd love to hear it. Please email me. And until, go ahead, Leslie.
One thing, Mr. Gibson put a chat in there about the Irving Archives and Museum, with the Smithsonian traveling exhibit for the Green Book. I will be speaking there on January the 7th, which is a Saturday, on the Green Book's topic. And I'm really excited because that way I get to see the Green Book exhibit that the Smithsonian has been hosting. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. I will make sure to also link that in the email. When I had my tech difficulties earlier, I lost the link you gave me, Leslie, so maybe you can email me that again, but it has to do with the Irving Archives and Museum. So thank you, Gibson, for the reminder there. All right, until next time, thank you so much. So nice to have you. Take care.
Thank you.